And thanks to our friends on the 5, and welcome to Hannity. And this is a Fox News alert on this very busy news night. Europe is on the edge following yet another brutal attack in London. Also, CNN tonight facing a major credibility crisis after a host calls President Trump a piece of, well, you know what, and with a brand new video appearing to show a reporter staging a protest. Talk about fake news. Also, liberal comedian Bill Maher under fire for using the N-word. And we'll also have the latest fallout from Kathy Griffin posing like an ISIS fighter with a bloody head looking like President Trump. And she's not the only one doing things like this. Should the Secret Service be investigating? We'll have a full report. Also, Senator Mark Warner and Vladimir Putin, just the latest, to throw cold water on the Russia collusion conspiracy theory. So why is this a major story in the media, despite zero evidence? We'll get into all of that. But first, it is time for the world to wake up. It's time to realize the very serious threat that is posed by radical Islamic terrorists, and that is tonight's opening monologue. All right, so after the city of London was rocked by yet another deadly terror attack, President Trump, well, he's leading the way and calling for the world to unite and defeat radical Islamic terror. Now, yesterday, President Trump delivered this very powerful message. Let's take a look.
The United States will do everything in our power to assist the United Kingdom and its citizens as they work to protect their country and to bring those that are guilty to justice. This bloodshed must end. This bloodshed will end. As president, I will do what is necessary to prevent this threat from spreading to our shores and work every single day to protect the safety and security of our country, our communities, and our people.
Why is that so hard to comprehend? And earlier this morning, in a series of tweets, President Trump renewed his call for a travel ban that is being held up in the courts, of course, because of judge shopping. He wrote, quote, "People, the lawyers, and the courts can call it whatever they want, but I'm calling it what we need and what it is, and that's a travel ban." The Justice Department should have stayed with the original travel ban, not the watered-down, politically correct version they submitted to the Supreme Court. The Justice Department should ask for an expedited hearing of the watered-down travel ban before the Supreme Court and then seek a much tougher version. In any event, we are extreme vetting people coming into the U.S. in order to help keep our country safe. The courts are slow and they're political. Now, the president is dead on right. Instead of doing nothing and hoping that the problem of radical Islamic terrorism is just going to somehow go away all on its own, it is time for the United States and the world to be proactive. It's time to do everything we can do as a country to prevent the types of attacks that we're seeing in Europe and seeing right here in America. Now watch this. Channel 4 in England. This is mind-blowing. They are reporting that one of the London terror suspects actually appeared in what was a year-long documentary that was called The Jihadis Next Door. Other major news organizations like the New York Times and CNN and Sky News and several British outlets are also reporting that the suspect was actually in the film. This went on a year. It's like live TV. It's crazy. Anyway, British Metropolitan Police are refusing to confirm if the suspect did in fact appear in the documentary, but earlier today, Channel 4 put a video on its Facebook page that features a scene from this documentary. Really? Real lives of the jihadis? Take a look at this.
Anyone got compass? Guys, tell me the Qibla, please. Somebody tell me the Qibla.
Anyone got a smartphone?
Oh, sort out the Qibla, bud. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
We just want to speak to you. We've had a call from a member of the public saying what? that you may have had someone had an ISIS-looking flag on them. You're detained.
Detained for what?
You're detained.
Are you insane?
For the
Are you
purpose of
insane?
search.
What search? You're not searching me. Are you insane?
Search for what? Search for what?
Why are you touching him for?
What offence is it?
You're detained for the purpose of search.
Which member from it? You're lying! You're lying!
No, I'm not.
You're a liar!
You're all detained
Yes.
for the purposes of a search.
Okay.
Under Section
For a
44 of the
flag.
Terrorism
Where's
Act.
the... You're lying now!
The only English white person who's a non-Muslim was part of our group, but because he's white and he's English, he can go, but all of us that were just praying, we have to stay. This is the reality.
This is the reality.
This is the reality. Don't forget all the laws and all this. This is the reality.
There's no reason for us to be detained now. There's no evidence.
We were just praying. We can't pray as well.
And do you know what's funny? I'm going to now start searching you. You're detained for the purpose of the search.
Don't touch me, man.
If you...
Now, we will have more on this later in the program today, and also tonight, the Destroy Trump propaganda media and the left are ignoring the dangers that are posed by radical Islamic terrorists. Now, some in the Destroy Trump media, and this is unbelievable, they're actually attacking the president, and they're trying to downplay this vicious terror attack. Take a look at this.
Is the president trying to provoke a domestic terrorist attack with this Twitter rant, because only to prove himself right?
What is the risk? There's certainly a risk of underreaction, but is there any risk of overreaction, of deploying too much? You know, as we've been watching all of this live coming into our satellite center here in New York City and then beaming it out from London, is there ever a point where you go, well, that's too much?
I really wish someone, in the name of national security, that someone will just change the password on his Twitter account, and so he could be locked out, because what he is doing is erratic, it's dangerous, and it's also just false.
Really provoking an attack, others questioning if the London police went too far. Well, how else do you stop these people? Then, of course, there's the mayor of London. Now, he's facing very heavy criticism for this ridiculous statement. Watch this.
Londoners will see an increased police presence today and over the course of the next few days. No reason to be alarmed. One of the things the police and all of us need to do is make sure we're as safe as we possibly can be. I'm reassured that we are one of the safest global cities in the world, if not the safest global city in the world. But we always evolve and review ways to make sure that we remain as safe as we possibly can.
Really? No reason to be alarmed? Now, that type of politically correct statement is the exact opposite of what is needed in the world right now. That's why President Trump was quick to call out the mayor of London, and it's why the president is speaking out and refusing to capitulate to these radical Islamists. And, of course, there's former Obama National Security Advisor Susan Rice. And yesterday she said, oh, there's not really much that we can do to prevent these types of terror attacks from happening. Really? Watch this.
We are battling ISIS in Syria and Iraq, Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Afghanistan, and we see elements of the terrorist threat in all parts of the world, from Africa to the Middle East to Southeast Asia. We need to remain very focused on dealing with that threat, but at the same time we need to recognize that there will be homegrown extremists in all of our countries, and there is no easy way to predict and defeat every single one of them. And so we have to strengthen our intelligence, our law enforcement, and work together with critical partners like the United Kingdom.
After 8 years of your administration being unable to acknowledge radical Islamic terrorism, we need lectures from you? I don't think so. Here with reaction, the Deputy Assistant to the President, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Dr. Gorka, there is such denial. I want to go over this documentary, and we'll show it on the side of the screen again. I mean, in this documentary, what they're saying is one of the London Bridge attackers, literally identified on the video as OBS, and the network, Channel 4, that ran it actually showed it, but literally said on this, you could see the black flag of the Islamic State. He's saying Sharia's coming to the UK, and this black flag that you see here one day is going to be on 10 Downing Street. And then he says what's going to happen, you're going to face a backlash in this country, and if you're going to support and suppress, I mean, it's like a tinderbox, it's going to explode. Now, keep running this tape, and I'll ask you this. This is the same country that has 88 Sharia courts, Dr. Gorka. 88. Please tell me how capitulation and some type of accommodation has worked in London's favor here, because I don't see it.
Well, look, I'm not here to talk for the authorities in London. I hope that this is a wake-up call. We've had almost 800 people killed in the West in just the last 2 years, 800 people injured in the West in terrorist attacks, and almost 200 killed. If you listen to Ambassador Rice, it's exactly that attitude of defeatism. It's people like Rice, Ben Rhodes, Colin Kahl, who are covering their tracks for the disastrous policies of the last 8 years, who will tell you, well, we can't defeat this kind of thing. Well, we can now because we've got somebody called Donald J. Trump in the White House. So we're not going to put up with this. If you are advocating for the overthrow of a democratic order, if you say that the caliphate, the theocratic Islamic state that ISIS has created has to cover the earth, you are a threat to all liberty-loving people in the world, whether you live in Manchester or whether you live in Boston, D.C., London, or anywhere in the West.
You know, I want to ask you this. This is so important. I mean, look at the coverage in this country. You got, you know, people on NBC News. Is Trump trying to provoke a domestic terrorist attack with his tweets? And then literally reporting, asking if the London police overreacted to the attacks. Well, after you plow down people on London Bridge and you come out slashing with knives, you know, I do self-defense, blade and gun training, firearm training. You know what? One of the hardest things to defend against is a blade. How do you stop them, and how do people raise these insane questions? What are they missing?
They live in a fantasy land, Sean. For my sins, I went on CNN early this morning. Supposed to be a 3-minute hit. For the next
you have my sympathy. You have my great sympathy.
For the next 16 minutes, the host obsessed about one of the president's tweets. 16 minutes. There are 7 people dead in London. There are 48 people, half of them in the ICU, in hospital, and we're talking about tweets.
Dr. Gorka, thank you, and appreciate it. All right, when we come back, speaking of CNN, they have a major credibility crisis. Just this weekend, a host called the president a piece of you-know-what. Also, the network caught potentially staging a protest. You know what? We've got the tape. We'll show it to you and get reaction from Michelle Malkin. And also tonight,
one of the big questions, of course, is there any evidence of collusion that you have seen yet? Is there?
There is a lot of smoke. We have no smoking gun at this point, but there is a lot of smoke.
Yet another Democratic lawmaker admitting no smoking gun, no evidence of collusion, Russia-Trump collusion. So why are the liberals and the media, why are they still pushing this conspiracy theory narrative day in and day out? Sarah Carter, John Solomon from Circuit News. We'll talk about all of that. Also, Geraldo, Monica Crowley, straight ahead.
This program is brought to you by Dulcolax. For predictable relief from constipation, try Dulcolax laxative tablets.
Constipated? Trust #1 doctor recommended Dulcolax. Use Dulcolax tablets for gentle, dependable relief, suppositories for relief in minutes, and Dulcolax for comfortable relief of hard stools. Dulcolax, designed for dependable relief.
President Trump's first trip abroad. Israel, Saudi Arabia, the Vatican, NATO, G7. It's historic. Promote
the funding. To find out how much you qualify for, go to OnDeckTV.com.
Welcome back to Hannity. So night after night, right here on this program, we've been holding the Destroy Trump media accountable for their extremely one-sided, ideological, mean-spirited, and often downright nasty coverage of President Trump, his staff, and even his 11-year-old son, his wife, his daughter, and family. Now, one network has been particularly unfair in their coverage of the administration, and we are once again, we're going to do their job and call them out. There is a massive credibility crisis at the Clinton News Network, and that is tonight's mini monologue. So over the weekend, CNN host, constant Trump critic, Reza Aslan let his true feelings about the president be known. He tweeted out, quote, "This piece of, well, you know what, is not just an embarrassment to America and a stain on the presidency. He's an embarrassment to humankind." Now, Aslan later apologized, writing, quote, "Oh, he lost his cool after his apology," by the way. CNN, they released a very puzzling statement. It reads in part, quote, "Well, Reza Aslan is not a CNN employee, but does host a series on the network, and we're pleased that he's apologized for his tweets." Excuse me, that means he works for you. Now, in one way or another, you're contracting with him. Now, this guy has also said worse, and he's done it multiple times. Now, apparently, a CNN host on a CNN show literally can call the President of the United States a piece of, well, you know what, and other horrible things, and get away with it. Now, just for a second, let's imagine if I tweeted the same thing about President Obama when he was in office. You think the Clinton Soros group would be calling for my head and once again attacking my advertisers? Now, sadly, the Aslan tweet wasn't the only embarrassment over at CNN this weekend. Yesterday, a CNN reporter and crew in London, well, they were accused of creating fake news after they were filmed seemingly staging a group of anti-terror Muslim demonstrators behind a camera shot in order to create a pro-Muslim narrative. Now, CNN, they're vehemently denying what you can obviously see, saying, quote, "staging." Well, the network is calling the story nonsense. They told FoxNews.com, "This story is nonsense. The group of demonstrators that was at the police cordon was being allowed through by officers so they could show their signs to the gathered media." The CNN crew, along with other media present, simply filmed them doing so. Okay, you really believe that? Remember, the same network, Anderson Cooper, made this disturbing comment regarding President Trump. Take a look.
He's the President of the United States. If he wants to say that, Barack Obama wants to say whatever. If George Bush says, I looked in his eyes and thought it was
on his desk, you would defend it.
Say it.
And who could forget last week's Kathy Griffin debacle? We'll get to that in a second. Joining us now with reaction, the host of Michelle Malkin Investigates, CRTV.com, our friend Michelle Malkin. All right, let's roll the tape. Let's let our audience decide. And I urge people, watch it. It's 2.5 minutes. You literally see the guy in the white shirt over there. He's saying, oh, this is where the mark is. This is where you stand. This is where we want you to stand. There's 12 protesters, 12. And they showed up apparently at multiple sites, according to Katie Hopkins. Now, then they get the shot in, you know, telling them where to go. All right, time to put up your signs. It's almost like, all right, quiet on the set. Quiet on the set. All right, ready? Okay, fake news. 3, 2, 1, action, go. You can see it all. It's hilarious if it weren't so sick.
Yeah, and you know, Sean, credit to Mark Antro, who was one of the citizen journalists who just happened to be on the scene and actually did some good on-the-ground reporting by simply pointing his phone camera at this staging so that we could see the fake productions on the ground. And you're right, it's lights, camera, faux action. And it's particularly striking, of course, because it works into the narrative that so many of these liberal elites, and particularly jihad apologists, have tried to ply in the mainstream media.
Okay.
And that
by the
is
way,
that
you look at him.
right?
He's actually showing them. Hold it up this high.
Yes, that's right. And of course, they had to have a kitty human shield there as well, right? Because they planted a little kid there with these pre-printed signs.
Yeah, all right, now let's go to Kathy Griffin. And, you know, I saw and I even tweeted one, as horrible as it is. You know, what I see is like an ISIS pose. Nothing funny about it. But I'm getting concerned. I'm seeing more of it on social media. And I retweeted one. It was from a couple of months ago today. But if you're going to show the president decapitated like that one, we should really be showing the real one. People need to see it. And if you're going to if we're going to do this, why do I believe this is a real, clear present danger and a threat to the president? More and more, I am convinced that anybody that can post that is really unhinged. Thoughts?
I think so too, Sean. And you know, there is an even worse aspect of this. When you think of all of the Western journalists who've been the victims of these kind of beheadings at the behest of ISIS and al-Qaeda operatives. Do these people at CNN and all of Kathy Enabler's cheerleaders and enablers in Hollywood not remember the grisly spectacle of the heads of James Foley and Nick Berg and Daniel Pearl? You know, ironically enough, there was a piece that was printed on CNN.com that worried about the effects, the violent effects of ISIS propaganda, and yet they have a woman who was promoted as a co-host on CNN's New Year's Eve show for ratings, who is engaged in the same kind of grisly, violent, inciting behavior.
All right, we're just out of time. Michelle, great analysis as always. Thank you. And coming up next on this Breaking News Night tonight here on Hannity.
One of the big questions, of course, is there any evidence of collusion that you have seen yet? Is there?
Listen, there is a lot of smoke. We have no smoking gun at this point, but there is a lot of smoke.
Unbelievable. Yet another Democratic lawmaker admitting there is zero smoking gun, no evidence to prove Trump, Russia collusion. So why are members of the mainstream media, after months and months and thousands of hours of coverage, why are they still talking about it with no evidence? Circa News' John Solomon and Sarah Cardin, they weigh in next. Also, Kathy Griffin sparked outrage last week over her vile photo shoot. She is not the only one posting vile photos like this. Should these people be investigated by the Secret Service? We'll get reaction. Monica Crowley, Geraldo Rivera, and HBO host Bill Maher under fire. He used the N-word. We'll check in with Larry Elder.
Liberty Mutual stood with us when a fire destroyed everything in our living room. We were...
Do something. Oh, I'm not a security guard. I'm a security monitor.
Why monitor a problem if you don't fix it? LifeLock does more than free credit monitoring to help protect your identity. Join starting at $9.99 a month. Go to LifeLock.com.
At Miracle Ear, we always take time getting to know you, so we can ensure you hear what matters most in your world. Call, click, or come in today to learn how to start your better days. Miracle Ear. Hear a better day.
If you've got a life, you got a Swiffer.
Live from America's News Headquarters, I'm Kelly Wright in Washington. Good evening. Here's what's happening. 12 people arrested after this weekend's terror attack in London have been released without charges. Police arresting them in an area that was home to 2 of the attackers. Police shot all the attackers to death Saturday after they rammed their van into pedestrians on London Bridge, then began stabbing people. The attack leaving 7 people dead and dozens injured. A newly released classified document suggesting election-related hacking penetrated further into U.S. voting systems than previously known. A 5-page classified National Security Agency report that was published online today says Russian hackers attacked at least 1 U.S. voting software supplier days before the presidential election. The report does not say whether the hacking had any effect on election results. I'm Kelly Wright. Back now to Hannity.
Welcome back to Hannity. So day after day, many on the left have been pushing the same old tired conspiracy theory, and that is, of course, President Trump colluded with Russia in order to win the election, and of course that led to WikiLeaks releasing the DNC emails. All right, how much longer is the left, the media in this country, going to advance this conspiracy theory without a shred of credible evidence? And that is the subject of yet our next mini monologue. All right, so over the weekend, even Russian President Vladimir Putin strongly denied that his country tried to interfere in our presidential election. He actually was making fun of us. Watch this.
I haven't seen even once
any direct proof of Russian interference in the presidential election in the United States. What could be easier in this day and age than using all the technical means at the disposal of the intelligence services and using those means to organize some attacks and then pointing the finger at Russia? We don't care who's the head of the United States. We know more or less what is going to happen. And so in this regard, even if we wanted to, it wouldn't make sense for us to interfere.
Now, do I trust Putin, what he has to say? No, not really. But what is true is there's no evidence, no concrete evidence so far that has been presented of Donald Trump and his campaign colluding with Russia during the election. Don't take my word for it. Listen to what the latest Democrat, in this case, the vice chairman of the Senate Intel Committee, had to say just yesterday. Don't believe me, believe the Democrat.
One of the big questions, of course, is there any evidence of collusion that you have seen yet? Is there?
Listen, there is a lot of smoke. We have no smoking gun at this point, but there is a lot of smoke.
Now, Senator Mark Warner, he joins a growing list of Democrats and other intel officials who admit there is zero evidence of Russian collusion. Watch this.
Have you seen anything that suggests any collusion between the Russians and the Trump campaign?
Well, there's an awful lot of smoke there, let's put it that way. People that might have said they were involved, to what extent they were involved, to what extent the president might have known about these people or whatever. There's nothing there from that standpoint that we have seen directly linking our president to any of that.
The last time we spoke, Senator, I asked you if you had actually seen evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, and you said to me, and I'm quoting you now, you said, not at this time. Has anything changed since we spoke last?
Well, no, it hasn't.
I know we need to go soon, but just to be clear, there has been no actual evidence yet.
No, it has not been.
Okay.
No, it has not.
At the time I left, I did not see any smoking gun certitude evidence of collusion.
And there's many more, like Maxine Waters and others. Now, so no evidence of collusion, but the media is giddy, because this Thursday, the fired FBI director, the disgruntled now FBI director, former FBI director, is going to testify before the Senate Intel Committee. But according to CircuitNews.com, Comey is, quote, formally refusing to answer questions submitted to him by a bipartisan group of senators, suggesting he no longer must do so. He doesn't have to. He's a private citizen. So is James Comey, is he adding fuel to the Democrats' conspiracy theories, or will he join now a long list of officials who are saying there's no smoking gun evidence at all that President Trump colluded with Russia? Joining us now with reaction from CircuitNews.com, John Solomon, Sarah Carter. Let me start with this. Here's the problem Comey has. Comey is, the New York Times headline, again, not sourced, which is hilarious. Unnamed sources run the world now, Sarah. But he's now saying he wrote a memo to self back in January. Okay. People interpreted that, oh, my gosh, Donald Trump was obstructing justice and saying don't go further with General Flynn. Okay. Then he testified 5 months later in May 3rd, all right, a little over about 4.5 months. And he said in May, no one ever tried to do this to me. There is 18 U.S. Code 4. And if he knew that somebody was trying to obstruct justice, in this case the president, and he says anything like that on Thursday, doesn't that mean that he's admitting that he committed a felony?
Yes, I mean, according to the sources that I've spoken with, and I've also spoken to sources in law enforcement, he would be required to report that. So look, we're looking at a story.
Required back in January.
Yeah, he would have been required back in January to report that, not before a committee, certainly not before the Senate Intelligence Committee. So I don't think we're going to get this explosive, the president tried to coerce me story coming out of Comey this Thursday. I think people are following that are going to be, they're going to be disappointed when they hear his testimony. So I don't think that's it. And you brought up a really important point, Sean. These are based on anonymous sources spreading these kind of rumors without a basis in fact. If there was somebody on the Trump team or in the administration that was colluding with the Russians, would the FBI really be putting that out there? I mean, they wouldn't be talking about it. They would be building a case against the person, and then they would be charging them.
All right, John, let me go to your report and Sarah's report, where he's refusing to answer these questions from this bipartisan group of senators. Even though he's a former FBI director, you point out that is very, very unusual give us the rest of what you're reporting here.
Yeah, I think the senators who asked it, which were 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, were surprised that Comey would say, I don't have to answer your questions because I'm a private citizen. There's lots of private citizens that have willingly testified in the last couple of months. Former CIA Director John Brennan, former Attorney General Acting Sally Yates, the former DNI Clapper. So it's an unusual excuse, and it sort of signals that he may be worried about what sort of questions the Judiciary Committee was going to ask, and maybe what one of the senators said to me, venue shopping, looking for a more favorable place to tell a story than the Judiciary Committee, which might ask him some pretty hard questions.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Sarah, we have judge shopping and now we have venue shopping for former disgruntled, fired FBI directors that actually said he'd never been in any way, did anyone ever try to get him to obstruct justice. I want to ask about, a lot of this is related to his own personal memos to self. Because the way this was reported, it seemed like somebody close to Comey leaked it. And so now he's going to have to answer to the memo question whether he wants to or not, is he not?
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like, you know, based on the way this story was structured, it was somebody very, very close to former Director Comey. And now what's going to happen is, you know, everybody wants to know, they want to see the memos. This was about the Senate Judiciary Committee's questions. Could we look at these personal memos? Who, what, where, when, and why? Was there this pressure on you? Why didn't you report that back in January? Let us see them. And unfortunately, for the Judiciary Committee, Comey's taken it upon himself to say, you know, I'm a private citizen. I don't need to answer your questions. But I wouldn't be surprised if someone on the Senate Intelligence Committee actually asks him some of those questions on Thursday.
Exactly.
He's going to be stuck having to answer them.
Yeah, and John, somebody's got to be telling him at this point, you may be admitting to a felony. You might want to be careful here. But it's interesting, he did admit Hillary committed felonies, didn't he?
Well, he certainly accused her of using extraordinarily bad judgment, I think was his word, in the use of her classified emails in a private email system. Obviously, he didn't feel there was intent to go ahead with forwarding a criminal